How's the infrastructure going to change in 5G? Do they just add more stuff to those existing cell towers, or is there going to be a whole different way of deploying cell towers, or cell towers going to look different than they do now?
No, that's, an awesome question. And the answer to your question, the short answer is both. You should expect both things will happen. So let me elaborate on that a little bit. So as you said, right now, the way we connect to each other through our cell phone is that your cell phone first connects to what's called a base station, and that's a receiver that's on a big antenna. And I think we're used to seeing them. We see them on top of all the buildings these days. If you actually drive along the interstate, you might see that some of them are disguised as trees. They're painted to kind of hide them in the neighborhood, but they're absolutely everywhere. And 5G will actually enhance that a little bit. So you should expect to see, more antennas popping up on these big poles. And these antennas will essentially do the job of 4G devices a little bit better. But the big thing that's coming with 5G is what's called the millimeter wave revolution. So right now, typically when you transmit your electromagnetic waves are, let's say in the range of 1 gigahertz. Think about it, that's the typical frequency that you might see when you connect to your Wi-Fi. You might see, 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz. That's where you operate. But the way if you keep doing this, you reach the point where you can't support 1 million devices connecting to each other if you stick at these frequencies, because you start, missing space where everyone can talk to each other. And so 5G decided to actually go much further high in the spectrum. So we're talking about, frequencies of tens of gigahertz and above. The way you want to think about it is, your microwave, for instance, when it heats up your food, right? It excites water, and the frequency is 1 gigahertz. So the 5G is envisioning going, 10 times beyond that. So these are frequencies which are extremely high. They're not quite like optical frequencies, meaning they can still go through buildings, but they start, being much shorter distance. But what you benefit is that there's a lot of space there because not many people are using these frequencies right now. So what's going to change is the following. Because you go into these higher frequencies, we'll be able to have more bandwidth. And that's really what's going to be driving these huge data rates that I was mentioning before. But at the same time, your electromagnetic waves will only be able to go over shorter distances. And so what we should expect to see is we should expect to see more antennas popping up. So instead of seeing, a few of these big antennas per block in a city, we should expect to see smaller antennas popping up on traffic lights, maybe on some road signs, and you'll see an increased density of these antennas. That's a big change that everybody will be able to see already. You might have heard that some companies, Verizon, AT&T, are already advertising 5G. Mm-hmm. And, if you listen to what I said, you're like, well, it's not like I've seen a whole lot of these new antennas pop up. So what's going on? So what they're doing is they're doing 5G, but they're not quite yet doing the full millimeter wave 5G. I think that's only available in a few select cities. What they're doing is they're improving the existing infrastructure. That's why you don't quite see a change. And as a result, you might get a new 5G phone, but don't expect the data rate that I just described. If you buy a 5G phone today, you might get a small improvement on data rate, but it's not going to be that crazy. So that's one thing. The second thing that I wanted to mention is that there are a lot of regulation issues behind 5G. Because the standard is there to say, this is what you have to do. But then when it comes to deploying antennas, there are a lot of, public health issues that you have to consider. You have to decide who owns, the pole on which you put the antenna. And it's not clear yet that everyone is on board with that. And it's all for good reasons. I'm not saying that anyone is trying to harm the deployment of 5G, but there's a discussion that needs to go on to make sure that all the stakeholders are okay with the way it's being deployed.